Morning. Doing all your dirty work. Oh yeah. I'm so tired of doing all your dirty work. Oh yeah. I gotta get bacon. Anyways. I haven't played that one in a while. Apparently.
Hamlin towns in Brunswick, my famous Hanover city. The river Western, deep and wide, washes its wall on the southern side. A pleasanter spot you've never spied. But when begins my ditty? Almost 500 years ago. To see the townsfolk suffer so from vermin was a pity. Rats, they fought the dogs and killed the cats, bit the babies in the cradles, and ate the cheeses from the vats, and licked the soup from the cook's own ladles. Split open the kegs of salted sprats, and they messed the men's Sunday hats, and even spoiled the women's chats by drowning out their speaking with shrieking and squeaking in 50 different sharps and flats. At last, the people in a body to the town hall came flocking. "'Tis clear," cried they, "our mayor is a naughty, and as for our corporation, shocking. To think we buy gowns lined with ermine for dolts who can't or won't determine what's best to rid us of our vermin. You hope because you're old and obese to find in the furry civic robes ease. Rouse up, sirs, give your brains the racking, find the remedy we are lacking, for sure the state will send you packing." At this the mayor and corporation quaked with a mighty consternation. An hour they sat in council. At length the mayor broke silence. "Before a gilder eyed my ermine gown sell, I wish I were a mile hence. It's easy to bid one rack one's brain. I'm sure my forehead aches again. I scratch it so, but all in vain. Oh, for a trap, a trap, a trap." Just as he said this, what should hap? At the chamber door but a gentle tap. "Bless us," cried the mayor, "what's that?" With the corporation as he sat. looking little too wondrous fat, nor brighter were his eyes, nor moister than a too long opened oyster, save when it knew his paunch for muteness, for a plate of turtle green and glutinous. Only a scraping of shoes on a mat, anything like the sound of a rat makes my heart go pit-a-pat. Come in, cried the mayor, looking bigger, and in did come the strangest figure. His long queer coat from heel to head was half yellow and half red, and he himself was tall and thin, with sharp blue eyes each like a pin, and light loose hair and swarthy skin, nor tuft of hair on cheek nor beard on chin, but lips or smile went out and in, there was no guessing his kith or kin, and nobody could enough admire this tall man in his quaint attire. Quoth one, it's as my great-grandsire, starting up at the trump of doom's tone, I'd walk this way from his painted tombstone. He advanced towards the council table. Please, your honor, said he, I am able, by means of secret charm, to draw all the creatures living beneath the sun, that crawl or swim or fly or run, after me so as you never saw. And I chiefly use my charm on creatures that do people harm, the mole and toad and newt and viper, and people call me the Pied Piper. And here they notice round his neck a scarf of red and yellow stripe, to match with his coat of self-same check. And that scarf's end hung a pipe, and his fingers they noticed were ever straying, as if impatient to be playing upon this pipe, as low it dangled over his vesture so old fangled. Yes, said he, Pied Piper as I am, in Tartary I fred the cam, last June from his huge swarms of gnats. I eased in Asia than I am, of a monstrous brood of vampire bats. And as for what your brain bewilders, if I rid your town of rats, will you give me 1,000 guilders? 50,000 was the exclamation of an astonished mayor and corporation. Into the street the piper stepped, smiling first a little smile, as if he knew what magic slept in his quiet pipe the while. Like a musical adept to blow his pipe, his lips he wrinkled, and green and blue his sharp eyes twinkled, like a candle flame where salt is sprinkled. And ere 3 shrill notes the pipe uttered, he heard as if an army muttered, and the muttering grew to a grumbling, and the grumbling grew to a mighty rumbling, and out of the houses came the rats tumbling. Great rats, small rats, lean rats, brawny rats, brown rats, black rats, gray rats, tawny rats, grave old plotters, gay young friskers, fathers, mothers, uncles, cousins, cocking tails and pricking whiskers, families by tens and dozens, brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, followed the Pied Piper for their lives. From street to street he piped advancing, and step for step they followed dancing, until they came to the river Weser, wherein all plunged and perished, save one who stout as Julius Caesar, swam across and lived to carry, as he the manuscript he cherished, to Ratland home his commentary, which was, at first shrill notes of the pipe, I heard a sound as a scraping tripe, and putting apples wondrous ripe into the cider presses bright, and moving away of pickle tub boards, and leaving a jar of conserve cupboards, and drawing the corks of train oil flasks, and breaking hoops of butter casks. And it seemed as if a voice, sweeter far than by heart or by soul or degree, called out, "Oh, rats, rejoice! The world is grown to a vast dry saltery. So munch on, crunch on, take your nunch on, breakfast, supper, dinner, lunch on, and just a bulky sugar punch on, already staved like a great sun shone, gracious scarce an inch before me, just methought its head come bore me, I found the western rolling over me." You should have heard the Hamlin people ring the bells, they rock the steeple. "Go," cried the mayor, "get long poles, poke out the necks and block up the holes, consult with carpenters and builders, and leave in our town not even a trace of the rats." One suddenly up the face of the pipe perked in the marketplace. The first of you fools, 1,000 guilders. 1,000 guilders. The mayor looked blue, so did the corporation too, for council dinners may wear havoc, and Claret will sell vin de gras pop, and half the money would replenish their cellar's biggest butt of Rhenish. To pay this sum to a wondering fellow, with gypsy coat of red and yellow. Besides, quoth the mayor with a knowing wink, our business was done at the river's brink. We saw with our eyes vermin sink, and what's dead can't come to life, I think. So, friend, we're not folks to shrink from our duty of giving you something to drink. No matter of money to put in your poke, and as for the guilders, what we spoke of them, as you well know, was in joke. Besides, our losses have made us thrifty, 1,000 guilders, come, take 50. The piper's face fell, he cried, no trifling, I can't wait beside. I promised to visit by dinner time Baghdad, except the prime of the head cook's clottage. All he's rich in, having left in the caliph's kitchen, of a nest of scorpions, no survivor. With him I proved no bargain driver. With you don't think I'll make a stiver. The folks who put me in a passion may find me pipe after another fashion. How, cried the mayor, do you think I brook, being worse treated than a cook, insulted by a rival, with idle pipe and vesture piebald? Threaten us, fellow, do your worst, blow your pipe there till you burst. Once more he stepped into the street, to his lips again laid his long pipe, a smooth straight cane, and ere he blew 3 notes, such sweet soft notes as yet musicians never gave the enraptured air. There was a rustling that seemed like a bustling of merry crowds justling and pitching and hustling. Small feet were pattering, wooden shoes clattering, little hands clapping, and little tongues chattering, like foals in a farmyard and barley is scattering. Out came the children running, all the little boys and girls, with rosy cheeks and flaxen curls, and sparkling eyes and teeth like pearls, tripping and skipping ran merrily after. The wonderful music was shouting and laughter. The mayor was dumb, and the council stood as if they're changed into blocks of wood, unable to move a step or cry, to the children merrily skipping by, could only follow with an eye that joyous crowd at the piper's back, how the mayor was on the rack, and the wretched council's bosom beat, as the piper turned from the high street, to where the Wester rolled its waters, right in the way of their sons and daughters. Our return from south to west, and to Copperwood Hill his steps addressed, and after him the children pressed, great with joy in every breast. He never crossed the mighty top, was forced to let the piping drop, and we shall see our children stop. When lo, they reached the mountainside, a wondrous portal opened wide, as if a cavern was suddenly hollowed. The piper advanced, and the children followed, and when all were into the very last, the door in the mountainside shut fast. Did I say all? No, one was lame, you could not dance the whole of the way. In and after years, if you'd blame the sadness you used to say, as dull in our towns as my playmates left, I can't forget that I'm bereft of all the pleasant sights they see, which the piper also promised me. Before he led us, he said to a joyous land, joining the town just at hand, where waters gushed and fruit trees grew, and flowers forth a fairer view, and everything was strange and new. The sparrow was buried the peacock here, and our dogs outran our fellow deer, and honeybees had lost their stings, and horses were born with eagle's wings. And just as I became assured, by lame foot we speedily cured, the music stopped, and I stood still, and found myself outside the hill, left behind against my will, to go now limping as before, and never hear of that country more. Alas, alas for Hamelin, there came into many a burgher's pate a text which says at heaven's gate, opens the rich at as easy rate as the needle's eye takes a camel in. The mayor sent east, west, north, and south to offer the piper by word of mouth, wherever was men's lot to find him, silver and gold to his heart's content, if only he'd return the way he went, and bring the children behind him. But when they saw it was lost endeavor, the piper and dancers were gone forever. They made a decree that lawyers never should think their records dated duly, if after the day of the month and year these words did not as well appear. And so long after what happened here, on the 22nd of July, 1376, the better in memory to fix the place of the children's last retreat, they called it the Pied Piper Street, where anyone playing piper caper was sure for his future to lose his labor, nor suffered they hostelry or tavern, shock if were the street so solemn. And opposite the place of the cavern, they wrote the story on a column, and no great church window painted, the same to make the world acquainted, how their children were stolen away, and there it stands this very day. And I must not admit to say, in Transylvania there is a tribe of alien people who ascribe the way and dress of which their neighbors lay such stress to their fathers and mothers having risen out of some subterranean prison into which they were trepanned a long time ago in a mighty band out of Hamlin towns in Brunswick land, but how or why they don't understand. So, Lily, let me and you be wipers of scores out with all men, especially pipers. And if they should pipe us free from rats or from mice, if we promise them aught, let us keep our promise. There once was a young man named Roland Pye who played the recorder when he wasn't baking bagels. One day he was walking through a park playing his recorder to rest a while from all his baking when suddenly he spied a corpse lying on the ground beneath a swarm of flies. He put down his recorder, walked over to the corpse, shooed the flies away, and covered the dead man with stones. Returning to his oven later that day, he found that his oven blade had gone on by itself and already baked half the bagels he needed. From that day on, Roland Pye was the happiest baker alive. He'd bake until he was tired, then he'd pull his recorder out of his pocket while his oven blade went on by itself. But Roland Pye lived in a town whose mayor did not admire his skill and was jealous of his fame, so the mayor devised a plan to rid the town of Roland. In the beginning he said that Roland was a good worker but lazy. Next he said Roland baked a whole lot but badly. Then he accused Roland of being a sorcerer, and the people turned on him. Therefore Roland Pye took his recorder and left his home behind. When Roland Pye came to a neighboring town, he went to all the business owners, but none of them would give him any work. Finally, he met an old busker and asked him for work to keep body and mind together. "Come along with me," said the old man. "We will share alms." So Roland Pye and the old man started going around and singing. "Baker, why do you bear those silent things? Baker, how did you forget to stand where your feet are? Baker, no woman loves you well, although it is golden and good for her health. Baker, you are too dirty for a lover to wish to cream. Your things are not support an old-fashioned machine. Baker, line the rings and bash the doors. You don't need their applause for a thing that is yours. You are a baker and are what you are, not by a miracle, but by the work of your arms. Baker, be who you are." Everybody gave alms to the old man, but to Roland they said, "What is a young man like you out begging? Why don't you work for a living?" "Nobody will hire me," replied Roland Pye. "That's what you say. There is a king with so many hungry soldiers, and he'll pay good wages to anyone willing to feed them." So Roland Pye went to the king's kitchen and took the old man whose alms he'd been sharing. The oven had never been used by anyone. Roland mixed the dough, then he rolled it into rings, then he boiled them, dressed them with seeds, and baked them until they're golden brown. Then he tossed them into a crate to cool down. Whenever Roland wearied, he'd play his recorder. Once he was weary of playing his recorder, he'd sing. "Baker, why do you play them? Baker, why do you bear those silent things? Baker, how did you forget to stand where your feet are? Baker, no woman loves you well, although it is golden and good for her health. Baker, you are too dirty for a lover to wish to cream. Your limbs are the knots and cords of an old-fashioned machine. Baker, line the rings and bash the boards. You don't need their applause for a thing that is yours. You are a baker and are what you are, not by a miracle, but by the work of your arms. Baker, be who you are." Hearing the singing, a princess looked out the window. She saw Roland Pye and fell in love with him. But she was a princess and he a baker. The king would never consent to their marriage. So they decided to run away together. They fled at night in a boat. When they were already on the high seas, Roland remembered the busker. He said to his beloved, "We must fetch the old man. Since he shared his alms with me, we can't go off and leave him like that." At this, the old man came up behind the boat, walking on the water as though it had been dry land. Reaching the boat, he said, "We agreed to divide everything we had, and I shared everything I owned. Now you have the king's daughter, and must give half of her to me." At this, he gave Roland Pye the knife to cut his bride in two. Roland Pye took the knife with a trembling hand. "You are right," he said. "You are perfectly right." He was on the point of cutting his bride in half, but suddenly the old man stopped him. "Stop. I knew you were a just man. I'm the dead man, mind you, whom you covered with stones. Go now, and may the two of you always be happy." The old man walked away on the waves. The boat came to an island rich in all good things, with a princely palace awaiting the newlyweds. My first thought was he lied in every word, that hoary cripple with the malicious eye, askance to watch the working of his lie on mine, and most scarce able to afford suppression of the gleed of person to scored its edge at one more victim gained thereby. What else should he be set for with his staff? What save the wailing with his lies and snare all travelers who might find him posted there? And ask the road, I guessed what skull-like laugh would break, or crutch can write my epitaph or pastime in the dusty thoroughfare. If at his counsel I should turn aside and do ominous track which all agree high to the dark tower, yet acquiescently I deterred as he pointed, neither pride nor hope rekindling at the end descried, so much as gladness some end might be. For what with my whole world wide wondering, what with my search drawn out through years, my hope dwindled into a ghost on fit to cope with that stripper's joy success would bring. I hardly tried now to rebuke the spring my heart made, finding failure in its scope. As a sick man very near to destiny dead indeed, the fields begin and end the tears, and takes the farewell of each friend. And here's one bid the other go, draw breath freely outside. Since all is over, he saith, the blow falling no greater kept men. While some discusseth near other graves be room enough for this, one a day confessed for carrying the corpse away, with caribou banded scarfs and staves, still, the man hears all and only craves. He may not shame such tender love and stay. Thus Iantha's all unsuffered in this quest, her failure prophesied so often in writ, so many times among the band of wit, the knights who two dark towers search and dress their steps, that just to fail as they seem best, and all doubt was now should I be fit. So quiet as his bear turned from him, that hateful cripple, out of his highway into the path he pointed, all the days being dreary one at best, and dim was settling into its close, it shot one grim red deer to see the plain catch its stray. For mark, no sooner was I fairly found, pledged the plain after a pace or two, then pausing throw backward a last view, over the safe road 'twas gone, grey plain all round, nothing but plain to the horizon bound. I must go on, naught else remained to do. So on I went. I think I never saw such starved and noble nature. Nothing throws, for flowers as well expect a cedar grove. But chortle and spurge, according to their law, might propagate their kind with none to awe. You think a bird being a treasure trove. No penry inert in a single mason, some strange sort word the land's portion. See or close your eyes, said nature peevishly, and nothing skills. I can't help my case. 'Tis last judgment fire must cure this place. Calcite its claws to set my prisoners free. If there pushed any ragged thistle stalk above its mates, its head was chopped. The bents were jealous elves, well made the holes and rents in the dog's harsh swords leaves. Bruised as to walk all hope of greenness. 'Tis a brute must walk, passing their life over the brute's intents. As for the grass, it grew as scarce as hair and leprosy. Thin dry blades pricked the mud which underneath them kneaded up with blood. One stiff blind horse's every bone astare stood stupefied however he came there, thrust out past service in the devil's stud. Alive, he might be dead for aught I know, with red, gaunt, and callous neck astrain, and shut eyes beneath the rusty mane. Seldom went such grotesqueness with such woe. I never saw a brute I hated so. He must have been wicked to deserve such pain. I shut my eyes and turned them on my heart, as a man calls for wine before he fights. I asked one draught of earlier, happier sights. Ere fitting I could hope to play the part. Think first, fight afterwards, a soldier's art. One taste bold time sets all to rights. Not it. I fancied Cuthbert's reddening face beneath its garniture of curly gold. Dear fellow, till I almost felt him cold. An arm and mind fixed me to that place, that way he used, alas, one night's disgrace. Oh, when my heart's new fire and left it cold. Giles, then, the soul of honor, there he stands, frank as 10 years ago when knighted first. An honest man should dare, he said he durst. Good, but the scene shifts. Thaw, what hangs in his hand, pinned to his breast the parchment. His own band reached, poor traitors spit upon and cursed. Better this present than a past like that. Back, therefore, to my darkening path. No sound, no sight as far as the eye can strain. Will the night send a howlet or a bat, I asked, when something on the dismal flat came to arrest my thoughts and change their train. A sudden little river crossed my path, as unexpected as a serpent came. No tides congenial to the glooms. This, as it frothed by, might have been a bath for the fiend's glowing hoof, to see the wrath of its black eddies be spat with flakes of spoons. So petty yet so spiteful, all along low scrubby alders kneeled over it. Drenched willows flung them headlong in a fit of rout despair, a suicidal throng, the river which had done them all the wrong, whatever that was, rolled by to turn no whit. Which while I forded, good saints, how I feared to set my foot upon a dead man's cheek. Each step or field a spear I thrust to seek, for hollows tangled in his hair and beard. It may have been a water rat I speared, but ugh, it sounded like a baby's shriek. Glad was I to reach other bank, now for a better country. Vain presage, poor the strugglers, what war did they wage? Whose savage trample could thus pad the dank soil to a plash? Toads in a poisoned tank, or wild cats in a red-hot cage. The fight must so have seemed in that foul cirque. What penned them there with all the plain to choose? No footsteps leading through that horrid muse. None out of it. Mad Druids set to work their brains, no doubt, like galley slaves a Turk pits for his pastime, Christians against Jews. And more than that, a furlong on, why there, what bad use was that engine for, that wheel, or brake not wheel, that harrow fit to reel men's bodies out like silk, with all the air of coffin's tool, on earth left unaware, or brought to sharpen its rusty teeth of steel. Then came some stub ground, once wood, next a marsh it would seem. Now mere earth, desperate and done with, so the fool finds mirth, makes a thing and mars it, till his mood changes and off he goes. Within a rude bog clay and marsh, sand and stark black dirt. Now blotches rankling colored gay and grim, now patches where some neatness of the soil, broke through moss or substances like oils. Then came a palsied over, a clapping again, a distorted mouth that splits its brim, gaping at death and dies while it recoils. As far as ever from the end, not in the distance but the evening not, to point my footsteps further at the thought, great black birds, Apollyon's woodland friend, sailed past Marita's wide-winged dragon pen, that brushed my cap, perchance the guide I sought. For looking up where I somehow grew, the plain had given place all round to mountains with such names that grace mere heights and leaps now stolen in view. How thus they surprised me, solving you, how to get from there was no clear case. Yet half I seemed to recognize some trick of mission that happened to me, God knows when, in a bad dream perhaps, here ended then progress this way, and in the very nick of giving up one more time came a click, as when the traps are jerked in the den. Burningly it came upon me all at once. This was the place. Those two hills crouched like two bulls locked horn in horn and fight, while to the left tall Scalp Mountain, Dutch daughter to dozing at the very nut after a lifetime of training for the sight. One in the midst lay at the tower itself. The round squat turret blinds a fool's heart, built of brown stone without a counterpart in the whole world. The tempest mocking elf points to the ship, and thus the unseen shelf he strikes on holding when timbers start. Not see, because of night perhaps, why nay came back for that. Behind the left a dying sunset kindled to a cleft. The hills like two giants in hunting lay, chin upon hand to keep the game at bay, now stab and end the creature to the heft. Not here, when noise was everywhere, it told, increasing like a bell, names in my ears, of lost adventurers my peers, how such was strong, and such was bold, and such was fortunate, yet each of old lost one moment now the woe of years. There they stood, ranged along the hillside met, to view the last of me, a living frame, for one more picture in a sheet of flame. I saw them and knew them all, and yet, dauntless slughorn to my lips I set, and blue, child rolling to a dark tower came. Now as Child Rolling to a Dark Tower Came, by Robert Browning. He was a Victorian poet. He was writing in the mid-19th century. I think he lived from, he was born in like the first decade of the 19th century. He would have died in like 1860 or 70 or something like that, I don't know. He would have been born a few years after the French Revolution. Crazy, crazy. The end of feudalism. I'm going to recite the Declaration of Independence, the first half anyways. I don't know the whole thing. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them to another, and assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal stations to which the laws of nature and nature's God entitle them, a separate and equal, a decent respect of the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, but among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To secure these rights, governments instituted by men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed. And whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles, and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light or transient causes. And experience accordingly has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer when evils are sufferable than right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they have become accustomed. But when long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces the design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty, to throw off such a government and provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused assent to laws most wholesome and necessary for the public good. There was once a rich man who had just one son, and the boy was dearly loved by his father. As everybody knows, the greatest scourge on earth for a rich man is work. Therefore, when his son turned 14, the father decided to send him to school to learn the science of laziness. On the same street as the rich man, there lived a famous and highly respected professor who had never done a lick of work in his life he could get out of doing. The rich man called on him and found him stretched out in the garden beneath the fig tree, with a cushion under his head, a cushion under his back, and a cushion under his buttocks. Before talking to him, I must first see how he does, said the rich man, and he hid behind a hedge to observe the man. The professor lay as still as a corpse, with his mouth closed, with his eyes closed. The only time he moved was whenever he heard the thud of a ripe fig falling on the ground near where he lay. He'd reach slowly out, bring the fruit to his mouth, and swallow it. Then he wouldn't stir again until another fig fell. This is just the professor my son needs, decided the rich man. He came out from his hiding place, introduced himself, and asked if the professor would teach his son the science of laziness. Old man, said the professor just above a whisper, don't talk so much. It tires me to listen to you. If you want to bring your son up to be as you and I are, just send him to me. So the rich man went home, took his son by the hand, thrust a feathered pillow under his arm, and led him to the garden. I urge you, he told him, to do everything you see this professor of idleness do. The boy, who already had an inclination for that particular science, also stretched out under the fig tree. Observing his teacher, he saw him reach for every fig that fell and bring it to his mouth. Why should I work myself to death reaching for figs, he thought. He lay there with his mouth wide open. Soon a fig fell into his mouth. He let it go down slowly. Then he reopened his mouth. Another fig fell. This time it missed. Why, he lay there perfectly still and murmured, why so wide of the mark? The fig fall into my mouth. Seeing how wise his pupil already was, the professor said, go on now. You have nothing to learn from me. You can even teach me something. So the boy went home to his father, who thanked heaven for having given him such a smart son. That was the science of laziness. I've made some editorial alterations to that story. It's a story based on an Italian folk tale in anthologized by Italo Calvillo. And instead of saying rich, in my story, the rich man is called an old Turk in Italo Calvillo's version, and I wasn't entirely comfortable using that slightly racist connotation. So I replaced old Turk with rich man. It makes more sense to me anyway. I admire Italo Calvillo, but he was from a different generation, I think. That accepted that kind of Oriental racism. Orientalizing racism.